I'll make three of us.
Wait, ready, song, go.
Let me know. Let me know what time.
She gonna read it?
She's supposed to be leading it.
Alright, read a black card, girl.
Johnny, read it.
Because God is sleeping over one of.
Okay, tell us, Jose.
Covered. What happened, so.
Fair enough. Kind of what's going on is we get requested and then we kind of got to go back and I know it's probably frustrating to say the least.
Oh, I can't even begin.
This is Tamla Horsford, a 40-year-old mother of 5 boys and the only black woman at a sleepover full of people she called her friends. On the morning of November 4th, 2018, her body was found face down in a cold backyard with no one having called for help in over 7 hours. And while the case was still open, the detective the county assigned to figure out what happened to her was sending her crime scene photos to women he was sleeping with and calling her porch lady in the messages. 2 law enforcement agencies looked at everything and said she simply fell, but her family has always said the real story was buried before anyone even started digging. That is Ralph Fernandez, the attorney who has been fighting for the Horsford family since the beginning. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what he means when he says that and why so many people around the world believe him.
Tamla Horsford died 7 years ago. So why is this news today? Probably because people still don't believe the investigation came to the right conclusion. Today, we noticed people clicking on our story from 2018, once again, trying to figure out how this dedicated mother ended up face down in a Forsyth County backyard. Investigators say she got drunk and fell from a balcony. But Horsford's family and online sleuths say when you look at all of the facts, this just doesn't make sense. I know people don't like to leave one platform to look at content on another, but seriously, if you are into mysteries and have an idea on what may have really happened the night Horsford died.
But before we get to the night this happened, we need to understand who Tamla was, who the people around her were, and what kind of county she had moved her family into. Tamla Ayanna St. Jor Horsford was born on October 10, 1978, in Kingstown, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, a small island in the Caribbean. Her family brought her to the United States when she was 11 years old, and they settled in the Bronx, New York. She grew up there and eventually moved to Florida as an adult, and that is where she met her husband, Leander Horsford. Leander had a daughter from before their relationship, and together Tamla and Leander went on to have 5 sons. Around 2012 or 2013, the family relocated to Cumming, Georgia, about 40 miles north of Atlanta because of Leander's work. By 2018, Tamla had been a stay-at-home mother for years. Her whole life revolved around her kids. She was known at every game, every school event, every neighborhood gathering. She would show up to her son's football games with a bullhorn, screaming her signature phrase, "Can't stop greatness."
A death investigation is like a puzzle.
This can't be real.
2 law enforcement agencies investigated piece by piece the death of Tamla Horsford. Both concluded she got so drunk at a party she fell from a balcony after everyone else had gone to sleep.
Having girls night, we were all just drinking and we played cards against humanity.
But her family insists that narrative doesn't solve the puzzle.
You get all this information and you go, wait, nothing makes sense here.
Ralph Fernandez, the attorney for Tamla's husband, says he's gone through the evidence, every interview, document, and scene photo. So has Tamla's father and friends like Michelle Graves.
Why not just let this go?
I cannot let this go because I know that what they said did not happen to her.
So we went through it all as well to take you inside the investigation to understand why the family remains convinced police are still missing pieces to this puzzle.
I know this was a homicide. The problem is I can't pin it on anybody because I don't have a badge and I don't have a gun.
She baked breakfast casseroles for the family before heading out anywhere. She FaceTimed her husband when she was out so he could see what she was up to. Tamla was, by every single account from everyone who knew her, the kind of person who made a room louder and warmer just by walking into it. People gravitated to her energy and warmth. Everywhere she lived, it was her home that became the house that all the neighbors and the neighbors' children congregated, her mother, Elizabeth Potts, said. Her stepdaughter, Akishma, described her as someone who would not allow you to be in a bad mood. The homeowner of the very house where Tamla would later be found dead called her always the life of the party. Now, let us talk about that house and the people in it. The event on the night of November 3, 2018, was a birthday and football mom sleepover hosted by a woman named Jean Myers at her home at 4445 Woodlet Court in Cumming, Georgia. Jean and Tamla knew each other through their son's youth football activities. The sleepover was Jean's idea as a way to celebrate her birthday without anyone having to drive home drunk. Come in pajamas, have drinks, have fun, sleep over. About 12 to 13 people attended in total. It was mostly women from the football moms circle, but 2 men stayed for the night as well. One was Jean's boyfriend, Jose Barrera, who at the time worked as a pre-trial services officer in the Forsyth County court system. The other was Tom Smith, whose wife Stacy was also at the party. There was also a woman named Madeline Lombardi, who was Jean's aunt and actually lived in the house at the time. Tamla arrived that evening around 8 o'clock, carrying a bottle of tequila as a birthday gift for Jean. Jean told her she does not drink tequila, so Tamla kept the bottle for herself. She immediately changed into her white one-piece fleece pajama set with gray paw prints on it, complete with a little hood that had ears, and her black and red star-patterned socks. That image matters because it is how her body would be identified the following morning. Now here is something important to sit with before we go any further.
We also got access to something that is not in the GBI's report. For the first time, the family is making their independent autopsy public. In it, Dr. Adele Shaker says the dislocated wrist mentioned in the GBI's report is actually a compound fracture. And the fracture in her spine isn't a fracture at all. And to him, what is most important is what the GBI's medical examiner did not find.
There is no evidence of any significant injuries to the skull bones.
In Dr. Shaker's report, he says the lack of broken bones in Tamla's skull make him skeptical that she died falling from the second story of a building. Now, at first, deputies on the scene seemed to agree.
They showed us the mulch and the rocks in the mulch and showed where, she tripped and fell over this little garden border.
From the homeowner to the detectives, there are statements pushing back against the idea Tamla fell from the porch.
If you went to brace yourself with your left hand, there ain't nothing there to brace yourself with. Yeah. And you spin, you know what I'm saying?
And even more unusual, how the homeowner and her boyfriend found Tamla's arms.
It's the weirdest thing. She was face down, but her arms were down she just face planted is the best way I can describe it.
So her arms were by her side?
Yeah, they were by her side, palms up.
It's a question we heard several times in the investigation because when you look at the scene photos, Tamla's left arm is actually off to the side, bent, her fingers curled under.
Did you ever touch her arm? No. Okay. Did you see anybody touch her? No. Other than you? No.
To this day, police can't explain the discrepancies, at least not in a way that makes sense to the family. They say despite the yellow crime scene tape, Tamla's death was never treated like a crime.
Tamla was the only black person at that party, while every single other person there was white, and this was not just any county in Georgia. Forsyth County had a documented history of violently removing its entire black population back in 1912. White mobs and vigilante groups terrorized black families out of the county. Churches were burned with people getting lynched and hanged publicly. Black families lost their land and property and never got it back, and the county stayed almost completely white for decades after that. As recently as 1987, civil rights marchers who came to protest that legacy were attacked by Ku Klux Klan members and white supremacists who threw rocks and bottles at them. By 2018, black residents were still only about 2 to 4% of the county's total population. That is the world Tamla had moved her family into, and it's the county whose investigators would decide almost immediately that her death was simply an accident. The evening of the party started normally. People arrived in the early hours of the evening. They ate, drank, and watched the LSU versus Alabama football game on television. Around midnight, the whole group, including the men who had been mostly hanging out in the basement, gathered around the living room table and played Cards Against Humanity for about an hour. Photos and videos that investigators later reviewed from that night show Tamla laughing, engaged, and enjoying herself throughout. At some point during the night, she stopped the group to FaceTime her husband Leander and her boys so everyone at the party could meet her family. Tamla was the only smoker at the party, and throughout the evening she stepped out to the second-floor back deck to smoke cigarettes. She also smoked a small amount of marijuana during the evening, and Madeline Lombardi, Jean's aunt, actually joined her for that. Witnesses consistently described Tamla as happy, social, and functioning well all evening, even describing her as a seasoned drinker who could handle a lot without showing obvious signs of being drunk. Nobody reported any arguments, any tension, or anything unusual happening at any point during the night. Around 1:30 in the morning, Jean and Jose headed upstairs to bed. Tamla was still awake downstairs and told them she wanted to step out to the back deck for one more cigarette before sleeping on the sofa or in one of the children's rooms. At 1:47 in the morning, the last person to see Tamla alive, a woman named Bridget Fuller, left the house when her husband came to pick her up. Before leaving, Fuller said Tamla was alone downstairs, sitting and eating a bowl of gumbo, and had mentioned she was going to smoke one last cigarette and then go to sleep. She was happy, calm, with no indication in the world that anything was wrong. Nobody would see Tamla Horsford alive again.
Forsyth County 911.
Hi, yes, I need an ambulance and a police to my home.
What's the address?
4450 Woodlet Court.
4450 Woodlake?
Woodlet.
Woodlet, okay. All right, 4450 Woodlet Court. What is your name?
My name is John Myers, Jeanne.
Okay, and your phone number is 609.
Yes.
Okay, what's going on?
We had people over last night. We were drinking. Most of us went to bed. One of them stayed on the balcony. She was drinking, and we just went outside, and she's laying face down in the backyard. It looks like, I'm guessing maybe she fell off the balcony, but she's stiff.
Okay, is she breathing?
I don't know if she's face down.
Okay, how old is she?
41. Here, hold on.
Hey, this is Jose Pereira.
Hey, have y'all checked to see if she's breathing?
She's not moving one bit. She's not breathing.
Okay.
I just try to assess her, touch her. She's completely face down in the yard. She is stiff.
Okay. Do you know if she, do you see any blood or anything where she... Are you there?
I am.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was outside.
It's okay. I'm not sure what happened to line there for a second. Do you see any blood or anything to where, from where she fell?
I don't know if I should move her over. I mean, she is completely face down.
Okay. I mean, can you just check and see if she's breathing? If she's not breathing and you know she's gone, then just leave her where she's at. If she... Okay.
1 minute.
The home had a security system made by a company called Arlo that sent alerts to Jean's phone whenever the back door opened or closed. Those logs became the only real objective timeline of what happened after everyone went to sleep. At 1:49 in the morning, the Arlo system logged the back door opening. At 1:50, it closed. Then, at 1:57 in the morning, the back door opened again, and it stayed open for the rest of the night with nobody closing it. That last timestamp, 1:57, is the last recorded trace of Tamla Horsford. Over the next several hours, 4 more guests quietly left the house. Marcy Hardin left at 4:10 in the morning to go to work. Paula Seals left around 7:45. Tom and Stacy Smith left around 8:30. None of them reported hearing anything unusual during the night. Then, Madeline Lombardi woke up in the basement to make her morning coffee. Madeline did not go outside right away. She went back downstairs a second time to check if Tamla had moved, and she hadn't. Then, Madeline ran upstairs to the 3rd floor and woke up Jean and Jose, telling them their friend from the islands was lying in the backyard and wasn't moving. Jose jumped up and ran outside immediately. At 8:59 in the morning, he placed the 911 call. By this point, Tamla had been lying in that backyard for a minimum of 7 hours, and possibly longer. That word right there, stiff, is medically significant. Rigor mortis, which is the stiffening of a body after death, had already set in by the time Jose was standing over Tamla in that backyard. That process typically begins within 2 to 6 hours of death, which means Tamla had been dead for several hours before anyone even thought to call for help. When deputies arrived 8 minutes after the call, what they found in that backyard was deeply troubling. The crime scene report described Tamla's body as lying face down in what investigators called a nosedive position, with her head pointing downhill and her feet towards the house just inside the grass line at the base of the elevated back deck. She was still in her paw print pajamas and star-patterned socks. Transparent fluid had come from her mouth and nose, and a red substance that looked like blood was visible on the cuff of her right sleeve and on the shin area of her right pad leg. Her right wrist had a visible protrusion on the side of the wrist, with a break in the skin right over it, and a responding deputy described it in early notes as looking like the bone was pushing out from the inside, as if she had tried to brace herself during a fall. A cut on her right shin and a long bruise on her left shin were consistent with a thin metal landscape border that was sticking up about 1 inch from the ground near where her feet were. Small scrapes were also found on the inside of her left wrist, the outside of her left thumb, and the tip of her left index finger. Up on the deck above her, investigators found an unlit cigarette and a lighter sitting on the deck floor, meaning she had gone out to smoke but had never actually lit it. The deck itself measured 3 feet and 1 inch from the floor surface to the top of the railing, with a drop of 14 feet 10.5 inches down to the backyard. That's roughly the height of a standard 2-story house. Inside the house, Tamla's pink bag near the back door contained her wallet, some clothing, and a small clear plastic bag of marijuana, which was collected and destroyed by police per their standard policy. The tequila bottle she had brought as a birthday gift for Jean was sitting at the bar about 1/8 full, and witnesses confirmed that she had been drinking most of it since she arrived at 8 o'clock the night before.
I'm completely not sure.
Okay, and that's the only blood that you would see?
That's what I can see without moving her over. I haven't seen her face.
Do you know if she was suicidal at all?
I have no clue. I've met her one other time. You know, like my girlfriend said, people were over last night. She was her birthday party. We're not the woman that we believe to be deceased, but it's my girlfriend's birthday party. Instead of having everybody go out, she had everyone stay in. And she was the last one I saw before everybody was typically put off to bed. She was the last one in the kitchen. She was just either waiting around for a ride or waiting until the morning.
Okay. How far is the where she would have fell from? How far is the deck from the ground?
I would probably say maybe 20 feet.
Okay.
20 feet from where your feet would be on the railing. The railing itself is maybe 3.5, 4 feet.
Okay. And what is her name?
I know her name. We call her Tam. I'm assuming that's short for Tammy or Tamra.
Was she there with anyone else?
Her name is Tam Horsford, Horsford, so the black female. I don't believe anybody was. My girlfriend has cameras here on the back deck that we can check.
Okay.
That I think would have caught the incident if she fell from here. Again,
The official autopsy was carried out by Associate Medical Examiner Andrew Koopmeiners at the GBI Medical Examiner's Office in Decatur. His findings were serious. Tamla had suffered multiple blunt force injuries to her head, neck, and torso, including bleeding around and under the brain, a fracture of one of the bones in her neck called the second cervical vertebra, and a tear in the right chamber of her heart. The medical examiner was clear about one specific thing early on. Those injuries could not have come from a trip or fall at ground level, and only a fall from the height of that deck, about 15 feet, could produce damage that severe. Her blood alcohol content was 0.238, nearly 3 times the legal driving limit in Georgia. She also tested positive for THC from the marijuana and had a trace amount of alprazolam, the medication known as Xanax, in her system at under 25 micrograms per liter. Nobody at that party could explain where the Xanax came from, and Tamla had no known prescription for it.
True, I don't know. It's hard to say if she fell from the deck or if she was already downstairs. She was the only smoker here, and I'm sorry. That's a lot of information.
Okay, I'm so sorry about that. So you think she's possibly out there smoking?
Yeah, she was the only smoker. I mean, I'm on the back deck right now, and cigarettes, lighter, that type of thing are out here.
Okay.
I'm just trying to see where on her wrist might have came from.
Okay. All right. Are all the people that were there last night, are they still at your house?
Okay. Okay, there are 4 people that were here last night that are no longer here.
Okay. And they just left this morning, or they leave last night?
Do you know roughly what time each of them left? Like, they completely, I'm assuming. We can check. She's got an alarm system that gives alerts when the doors are open on her phone.
Okay.
But I think the last time that I personally saw Tam was probably about 1 in the morning before I'd gone upstairs to bed.
Okay.
And at that point, she was the only one in the kitchen. I know.
Okay.
On February 20th, 2019, the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office officially closed the case with a straightforward conclusion. Tamla got drunk, stepped outside for a cigarette, fell from the deck, and died from the injuries of that fall. No foul play. But here is where things start to fall apart. The first problem is the detective they put in charge of investigating her death. Corporal Michael Christian was the lead investigator assigned to the scene that morning, and in October of 2020, he resigned while under an internal affairs investigation. 2 women came forward and told investigators that Christian had been sending them confidential details about the Horsford case on Snapchat while he was supposed to be investigating it. He had sent a crime scene photo of Tamla's body to one of these women, referred to Tamla as Porch Lady, used racially charged language in those messages, and also told these women privately that he personally did not believe the balcony fall story based on what he saw at the scene, even though he went ahead and publicly supported the accidental ruling anyway. The second problem is Jose Barrera, the man who made the 911 call. He was Jean's boyfriend and had been right there in the house all night. In December of 2018, He was fired from his job as a pretrial services officer after an internal county investigation found he had used his work computer access to pull up Tamla's incident report on at least 2 occasions and had shared that information with at least 5 people.
So obviously we're talking about Tamla Hosford. Let's start with, do you recall what information you had before you even started the autopsy, like what the sheriff's office or the coroner had provided to you?
Let me look at that specifically.
Okay.
But
And then did anybody from the sheriff's office come to the autopsy?
I don't believe anyone attended that autopsy, although I did meet with some law enforcement officers afterward. Let's see. I believe the initial information I had was that she was found dead in the backyard of a residence, basically kind of on the ground below a balcony or a deck, which they described as about 25 to 30 feet high. They said that she might have fell or possibly was pushed from the balcony. They also said that she was found that she had been drinking heavily the night before. And that's really the primary information I was working from.
Okay. And as far as you recall, nobody attended from the sheriff's office attended the autopsy to kind of, we try to come to a lot of those just so we can kind of go over as you're finding stuff.
I don't recall anyone attending the autopsy. Okay. I know I spoke to, I believe, someone named Mike Christian.
Yeah, he was the case agent.
I believe a day or 2 after the autopsy, and then I later met with him in person, but all after the autopsy.
Okay.
The third problem is about Tamla's arms, and this one is hard to brush aside. When Jean Myers first described finding Tamla that morning, she said the body was face down with both arms down by her sides. Madeline Lombardi, who first spotted her through the basement window, said exactly the same thing. A supplemental police report from the FCSO documented that Barrera told a lieutenant on November 7, 2018, that he had moved Tamla's left arm while checking for a pulse at the 911 operator's instruction. But when the GBI interviewed him directly during their reinvestigation, Barrera denied that he ever moved the arm and called the supplemental report, in his own words, bullshit. So the detective was mocking the dead woman on Snapchat while privately doubting his own official conclusion. The man who made the 911 call had illegally accessed her case file. The body appeared to have been touched or moved before police arrived, with contradictory explanations for why. And the Xanax in her system had no clear source. This is the foundation on which the Horsford family built their fight for a different answer. The case was closed on paper, but in the real world the pressure kept building. A petition on change.org demanding a new investigation into Tamla's death gathered over 700,000 signatures, and people who had never even heard of Forsyth County, Georgia, were reading about Tamla and asking the same questions her family had been asking since the morning her body was found. Then 2020 arrived, and everything intensified. In February 2020, Ahmaud Arbery, a 25-year-old black man, was chased down and shot dead while jogging in a predominantly white neighborhood in Glynn County, Georgia. 3 white men hunted him in pickup trucks and killed him, and for months after that, no arrests were made. It was not until a video of the shooting leaked on May 2020 that the country exploded with outrage and arrests were finally forced through. Then, in late May, George Floyd was killed by a Minneapolis police officer on camera, and the United States went into a full reckoning over how black lives are treated by the systems that are supposed to protect them. In that climate, Tamla's name came back with a vengeance. The hashtag Justice for Tamla spread across social media. Rappers T.I. and 50 Cent publicly called for a second investigation into Tamla's death, and nearly 1,000 people gathered outside the Forsyth County Courthouse to demand answers.
Each time I got more information, I became more involved because of the absence of critical information. And they're hoping to wear me out. And like I said, I may not be breathing long, but as long as I'm breathing, I'm going to work on this. Because that family is just as sad today as it was, the day of the tragedy. And so they deserve it.
So how do you think Tamla died?
I know she didn't die the way that the conclusion has been reached. I just don't know why she was moved and placed there. And I don't know who did it, but I have a good idea from statements and inconsistencies. And when you have law enforcement or people related to law enforcement that take the fifth or that don't produce records, or that the records have all been deleted, or that texts have all been erased. That's, I mean, think of the other side. I've tried over 315 jury trials. I lost count. So I've tried a lot of cases, and many, let's say 200 have been criminal cases. And I have to always torture myself by indicating that, when you're selecting a jury, do you believe where there's smoke, there's fire? Everybody, yes, yeah, of course, what else? So, well, in criminal case, you got to explain that, okay? Just because somebody's been charged, you believe they're guilty? Sure. I mean, why wouldn't they? You think the police are lying? Maybe they're mistaken, but it's like a recording. And so then you have to go and you have to branch out. And did you ever get a traffic ticket? Did you challenge it? No. Yes. Oh, there you go. Finally. Why? Because I was not guilty. So then you have to demean yourself, appreciate the seriousness of it, to get somebody to finally agree that not everybody that's charged is guilty, but really nobody believes it. You have an awesome task ahead of you to convince the people to go against their common, ordinary sense that the prosecution always tells them to rely upon, and that I used to say when I was a prosecutor representing the people.
The comparison to Arbery was not lost on anyone. His case only moved because a video leaked, but there was no video of Tamla's death. The only thing the Arlo system captured was a door opening and closing, and everything else happened in the dark, in the backyard of a house in a county with a 100-year history of closing ranks against black people. On June 12, 2020, Forsyth County Sheriff Ron Freeman formally asked the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to reopen the case, writing that renewed public demand for a closer look was best served by an independent law enforcement agency coming in to review the findings and look for anything new. The GBI agreed and spent roughly a year going through everything again from the beginning. The reinvestigation concluded on July 28, 2021, with the GBI finding no new evidence of foul play and the death remaining officially classified as an accident. The Forsyth County District Attorney, Penny Penn, reviewed the GBI's work and declined to pursue any criminal charges. But what the GBI confirmed during that reinvestigation revealed how broken the original process had actually been. The GBI acknowledged that the original crime scene had not been treated from the start as a potential homicide, that witnesses were not separated from each other for questioning when deputies first arrived, that the scene was not fully preserved, and that far fewer autopsy photos were taken than what would be standard in any suspected murder case. All of these were documented as failures in procedure, and yet according to the GBI, none of them changed what the physical evidence showed. Search warrants were carried out on phones and social media accounts, including those belonging to Tamla's husband, Leander, and nothing connected to any theory of foul play was found. The source of the Xanax in Tamla's system was never identified. One person at the party had a prescription for alprazolam and denied giving any to Tamla, but messages later showed that same person had given a small amount of Xanax to someone else the morning after Tamla's death, though no direct link to Tamla was ever established. For the Horsford family, none of this was enough. They had already gone and hired their own forensic pathologist, and in May 2022, attorney Ralph Fernandez put that independent autopsy in front of the public for the first time. The report was written by Dr. Otto Shaker, a certified forensic pathologist based in Florida who was hired independently by Leander Horsford. He and the GBI agreed on the broad cause of death, which was multiple blunt force injuries. After that, the agreement ended. Shaker said the wrist injury was not simply a dislocation, as the GBI had written, but a compound fracture, meaning the bone had broken through the surface of the skin completely. He then pointed to something about the blood around that wound that raised a serious flag. The blood staining near the wrist injury was on the wrong side of the sleeve, meaning it was on the opposite side from where the wound actually was, and the total amount of blood found at the scene overall was minimal. Based on this, Shaker's conclusion was that the wrist injury most likely happened after Tamla was already dead, not during a fall from the deck. Shaker said the absence of major damage to the bones of Tamla's skull made him seriously doubt that a fall from a 15-foot deck was the true cause of death. A woman with a blood alcohol content of nearly 0.24, almost 3 times the legal limit, supposedly falls head first from 15 feet and lands on hard ground, and the bones in her skull show no significant damage. Shaker did not claim to have a definitive answer, but he was saying clearly that the official version of events did not line up with what he was looking at. The family chose not to give the full independent autopsy report to the GBI during the reinvestigation and provided only a summary, with their reason being simple: they no longer trusted the institutions that had already handled this case. The GBI reviewed the summary, stood by its original finding, and that was that. The fact that she was a black woman, sadly, in a sea of people that weren't, might have something to do with why it wasn't more investigated, Tamla's sister-in-law, Terry Blanco, said. And in a county with the specific history that Forsyth County carries, that is not a small statement to make. As of the most recent records available, the case remains closed. No civil lawsuit has been filed, no criminal charges have ever been brought, no arrest has ever been made, and no new investigation has been opened. Tamla's 5 sons grew up without their mother. Leander Horsford spent years fighting for a different outcome. Her father, her sister, and over 700,000 people who signed that petition are still waiting. Do you also think Tamla's death is very suspicious and there may be some foul play? Let me know in the comments section. Also, click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this. See you in the next one.